Okay, welcome everybody. I have 2 o'clock on the eastern part of the country. So welcome this afternoon, wherever you might be joining us today. Thank you for coming back to, or maybe to your first Get the Dish virtual cooking series workshop. As mentioned, I'm Jennifer Brown. I am in North Carolina in the middle part of the state on the kind of the North Carolina-Virginia border. And I'm happy to be talking today about how to spice up your life while still keeping it healthy. So I think you have an initial poll you wanted to give them, Serene. Is that correct?
Yes. Are you okay if
Okay.
I launch it right now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Perfect. So this first quick question, Jennifer, it just has 4 quick questions. It's just to see if this is someone's first time participating in an extension class or workshop overall. And then the next question is if this is their first time participating in the Get the Dish series. The third question is what is their experience level with cooking with herbs and spices? And then the fourth question is just how many individuals are joining today's lesson. So I'm just going to give it a few more seconds and then I'll end that poll. And we appreciate everyone who is participating in the poll. We definitely do review this information. So in case you're wondering, we do it for a reason. I'll just give it about 10 more seconds.
From what I can see so far, you guys have been coming to a couple of different workshops, either in this series or maybe last year when we offered it. But I see a couple of new ones, so welcome. If this is your first time joining us, and I see kind of a across the spectrum with your experience with cooking with herbs and spices. So, okay, well, good. Thank you for letting us know that, so we know who we're talking to. So we're going to go ahead and jump into this presentation. Okay. So whenever I start talking with people about improving their health, a lot of times it's individuals with heart disease or they're concerned about their blood pressure, and maybe their doctors told them, hey, you need to eat less salt. Okay, well, I still want my food to be enjoyable. I still want it to be tasty. So we often tell people to cook with herbs and spices. And we kind of use those terms interchangeably a little bit. So we wanted to start off with providing information about the difference there. So part of it is just where they come from, you know, what part of the plant they come from. So our spices, which you probably are familiar with, cinnamon, they are, if nothing else, with your pumpkin pie spice and cinnamon lattes there. But there are certain things that come from the bark, certain that come from the root, such as ginger, onion, and garlic. And then there are other things that are the buds of the plants, the cloves and the saffron. Of course, you might be familiar with seeds if you've ever had a poppy seed muffin, or the little sesame seeds that are on top of your bread or your bun or something like that. The berry, which is where we get the black pepper, or just the fruit, which is our paprika and allspice, which we definitely use this time of year. And the herbs are the actual leaves of those shrubs. And you can see a variety of different examples there, such as parsley and thyme, basil, oregano, rosemary, sage are kind of the ones that I use probably the most often. You can use them either fresh or dried. Either way is perfectly fine. I am not a gardener. No matter what I've tried, it doesn't work. But I've heard that herbs are very hardy things. And I know our master gardeners or horticulture agents also teaches a lot of workshops with growing your own herbs. And so I do have a slide in here kind of about that, but I really say go talk to the expert. So if you have a horticulture agent in your county, or maybe you have some master gardeners as well that you can ask some different questions. I know a lot of individuals who live in apartments or different kind of complexes that you don't have space to have a garden. Growing herbs is something that you can do just on the windowsill in your kitchen. So that way, whenever you need something for your food, you can just go over there and pluck it off of it there, and you've got your fresh herb to do that. So either one is particularly fine. When you're looking at recipes, you kind of need to watch if it says, you know, fresh thyme or if it says dried thyme, and I'll talk to you about specifically why in just a little bit. But the dried versions could be ground up, it could be crushed, or it could be whole. You really just have to look at the labels when you're buying different things to make sure that you're using the right ones that your recipe calls for, or it might be too much of something, or you just need to tweak that. And we'll talk about how to do that. Also, sometimes you have a jar that is like a seasoning blend. It could be Italian seasoning, or maybe you buy a brand name and it has a variety of different herbs and spices in there. That's what those seasoning mixes is. Just they made a mix of it. They made their own little marinade or their own seasoning and put it in a jar, slapped a label on it. You can do the same thing. You can get a jar yourself and put all of the different herbs and spices that you like in that, so that all you have to do is you go in there and you reach and you grab your jar. This is my taco seasoning. I have my taco seasoning that I have right here, and it says, taco seasoning. And instead of going and buying those little taco seasoning packets that have a huge amount of sodium, we have a recipe and I'll make that. And I just keep this in my cabinet. So whenever I'm making tacos or some kind of a, dish where I want some spicy flavoring or some taco flavoring, then I can just reach in and grab this. I don't have to keep making that or going and seeing if I have a taco seasoning packet, because a lot of those packets are very high in salt. I just put all of those same ingredients from that taco packet in here, except the salt. It's kind of what I leave out there. Okay. Again, this slide is just a visual. Some of us like a lot of words when we're trying to understand stuff. Some of us like pictures. So I kind of threw this in there to show that that herb is just the leaf. And that's why when you go to the store and you're getting the different herbs in the fresh herb section, it's just a lot of leaves. You can use those perfectly fine, or you can grind them up yourself. You can buy them ground. You want to also understand that when you're buying certain things, you don't need a big jar. If you don't use it that often, just get a small little jar there, because I know that pumpkin pie spice might be something I'm only going to use one time of the year, and it'll take me a while to go through that jar. So I don't need a big, huge thing of cinnamon that they sell nowadays, unless I'm just making a lot of stuff with cinnamon there. So again, you can see the different pictures to show that the spices are coming from all of the other parts of the plant there. Okay. Okay. So, yes, I've got some different delicious pictures. I sent you guys a lot of recipes because that's really how people, when they want to learn how to cook with herbs and spices, I'm like, just start, just do it. There's no specific way, there's no specific thing. I was thinking about, what am I going to demo? I mean, it's just, here's a jar, put the spices and make your own seasoning blend. So and then just put it on whatever food you want. You can have one seasoning jar that you make, and you can use it on multiple types of meat. It doesn't just have to be, this is chicken, this is beef, this is pork. A lot of them are very interchangeable as well. I like using a lot of herbs and spices because I want that flavor, but I don't want all the salt and the high blood pressure and all that stuff that comes with it. So the reason I use a lot of herbs and spices is I want that flavor to the dishes. I like the variety of it. I can go to the store and I can buy a family pack of chicken, and I can, grill it or, cook it in the oven or the pan or however I want to cook it. And then just based upon what seasoning I put that on there or put on there, it's going to completely change the meal. I can, have that same chicken and I'm going to make an Indian dish, and I'm going to add, curry or different seasonings. I'm going to make a Mexican dish and I'm going to add some of the taco or the chili powder or whatever kinds of seasonings. But it's still the same chicken, because we're all, pretty much everybody's on a budget, and food is something that I can adjust my budget slightly. I go based upon what's on sale that week, but I can cook that chicken one time and have multiple different meals from that. So it helps my food taste better, so that it's not something just that I like. It's also something that I can change the seasoning and have everyone in my family like. It could be that I'm gonna make that food, those vegetables, those chicken, and then dish it all up. And then everybody has their own favorite seasoning that they want to add to it. I love garlic. So I can add a lot of garlic where maybe my daughter doesn't like a lot of garlic. I can have different seasonings that I can use as opposed to everybody reaching for the salt and pepper. Because I don't leave that salt and pepper on my kitchen table. It stays in my cabinet. So if we're sitting down and we're eating dinner, they have to get up and go get that salt or pepper shaker if they want that. And I have noticed if you're like me and you have different individuals at your home and you serve a meal and they always are reaching for that salt or that pepper or the hot sauce or whatever other kind of condiment, they don't do that as much when I'm using the herbs and spices because it has the different flavorings. They don't, they actually at least taste it first before they start putting different things on there. Herbs are also something that we've been using for many, many years to help with our health, for medicinal purposes. So I know that there's plenty of books out there that, oh, this herb is good for this herb's good for this herb's good for this. You can kind of do that research, or I can provide you with some information. I don't want to go down a rabbit hole too much and talk about all of the specific different ones and all of the different properties, but just know that there are many herbs out there that have antioxidants that are going to help us protect us from disease, keep our immune system. That's why when you're sick, they're like, oh, drink some tea and some herbal tea. Put this in it or this in it, or my mom always called for this, or my grandmother swore by this. There was a reason those things worked. It made them better. And they didn't have all the medications that we do now. And then it can also reduce the number of calories from all the condiments. So instead of my family having to have the ranch or the ketchup or honey mustard sauce for some of the meats or the side dishes, they don't need to. It's got the flavor and the seasoning that they enjoy, that they don't have to always be reaching for something. Because oftentimes those condiments can increase the amount of salt in our diet, the amount of sugar, as well as the calories, because we kind of forget how much we're using. So no matter whether you're doing herbs or spices or you're doing condiments, we still want to make sure that you're using those measuring spoons or measuring cups. A little dash of this or a pinch of this is okay, but oftentimes you start shaking that salt shaker on there and you don't have an idea of how much you're putting on there. Okay. So if you are interested in growing and harvesting your herbs, again, I've been told they're very easy to grow. I've even been encouraged to grow them because I've been told that some thrive on neglect. I'm like, well, then they would do awesome at my house then. You can grow them inside the windowsill. You don't need a lot of space for them. They just need a little bit of that sunlight daily. So just keeping them on the windowsill is good. You can go to the farmers markets and purchase them as well. And then you can even, it helps add to your garden. If you do garden outside, you can grow these and even throw a couple of different, flowers in that same kind of herb garden there, because a lot of them require the same amount of water or sunlight or soil. So they're very interchangeable. So say you like having a flower garden, you just throw little herbs there. It just adds a little extra greenery to your garden. Most of the people I know that are growing herbs, they're doing it in pots. You can see this picture here. As I mentioned, it doesn't take up a huge amount of space. You do want to label it just like you're going to label your jars. You want to make sure you're labeling what everything is. For the most part, they look very, very different. So usually you can tell, which one, what each one is. When you actually are ready to start harvesting them, it's best to, again, pick them in the morning after some of the dew and the wetness from the morning has gone away, but you don't want to do it so hot in the afternoon with the sun beating down on you if you're outside there. And you actually pick it before that little flower head on top of the herb develops. That's when it's best and it's kind of at its peak ready time there. Prepping them. Again, it's going to depend on which of the, specific herbs there are, but you want to wash the herbs just before you start using them. You don't want to, bring them in from the store and then rinse them and then put them in there, because anytime you do something like that, they're going to start, it's going to start to deteriorate. It's got that moisture on there, just like your lettuce. Same kind of thing with your herbs. You wash it right, but when you're ready to use it there. We do recommend, just like your salad, you're going to treat it like your salad, put it in that salad spinner or pat it with some paper towel to get that moisture off. If you have some herbs, the ones that have the leaves, like basil, for example, you're going to just remove those leaves, with your hand there. You can also just run your finger down the edge of the stem there, just run it down the stem in the opposite direction. So if I'm holding it up, you're just going to run it down that way, and the leaves should come off fairly easily. And you're just going to bunch them together. Some of the leaves you can roll up if they're kind of the longer ones. You're going to roll them up there. Other things, you're just going to hold it down and just chop it like you would anything else. You use that rock and chop motion. So if you're familiar with cooking, pretty much anything, you've got that rock and chop motion that you're just going to try to get there. Those large herbs, you're going to do the chiffonade. Again, you're just going to cut them in small little ribbons. So you just put all the ribbons down there. You can roll it up and just slice it like you would a long piece of, rolled up dough, like you're making cookies kind of thing. You could just do that, but just stack those leaves up. There's not any particular way. The main thing is just watch your fingers, because as you can see, the individual there, they've got their hand clearly held like this. So even when they're bringing that knife down, it's not hitting their fingertips. That's the main concern about that. Or you can see that sometimes you can just leave them bunched up in that picture there, and you're just cutting the ends off, and you can just move that rubber band down as you go. So it's keeping it all there. So you're not having to hold it with this hand bunched up. When we are cooking, this is where it comes down to the dried through for the fresh. It doesn't matter which one you use. You just need to follow the recipe there. So the guideline is, if you're using fresh herbs and it calls for, 3 teaspoons, then dried herbs, because it's ground up, it's more fine, it's more concentrated, you're going to use a third less. So that's the only difference there. Is if your recipe says 3 teaspoons of fresh and you're like, I don't have any fresh, I just have a jar of dried, you're going to use 1/3 of that. So it'll just be 1 teaspoon. Okay. Hopefully that kind of makes sense, but that's why you just need to pay attention to your recipes and be like, okay, this calls for fresh. Like I've got a recipe here for that I like for chicken seasoning, and it calls for dried thyme. Then I know that if I have dried thyme, I'm fine. I have my jar of thyme there. But if I have thyme leaves, I might need to, or fresh thyme, I need to chop that up, and I need to change the amount. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense there. So we're going to take a minute and we're going to launch a poll really quickly, another one. And this is about salt, because this is why we're talking about herbs and spices, is so that we can eat less salt in our diet. So I want to know if you know how much salt you're getting each day, or how much salt do we need each day? And then the second question is, what is the maximum amount of salt I should eat? And then how much salt do you think you get from the salt shaker? So just take a minute and it's perfectly fine if you completely and utterly guess. And I didn't know how to, I know it just says grams. So I'll kind of talk to you about how much all that means there. Because we also talk about sodium. When you're looking on the label of something, it's going to have milligrams. It's gonna, your recipes are going to have teaspoons. So I didn't know how to put, what to ask about, but this was, the numbers I got. So I just left it their way. So what do you think? How much do we need? What is the maximum that we should get? So there's a difference of course, with that, we need a certain amount for our body every day. And then there's a limit that's recommended not to get more than this. So those are the first two questions. And then I want you to guess how much you get from your normal salt shaker every day. So, okay. So just another minute or another second or two, give you a chance to fill that out. I think most everybody's done that there. Okay.
Great. I'm gonna go ahead and end it for you.
Yes. Yeah, go ahead.
Would you like
Okay.
me to share results?
Yes. Okay. I think it said it was sharing. Okay, so how much salt we need per day? It is supposed to be less than 1 gram. Okay. Less than 1 gram. That's how much we need, is just about a gram or less than that. Okay. Then the maximum amount we should get is no more than 5 grams. So you guys got, most of y'all got that correct. And then how much do you think we get from the salt shaker? It's actually about 15%. Okay. So, but still pretty good guess. Most of the people, okay. Most of the individuals, whenever I'm teaching a herbs and spices workshop, they're like, oh, I don't really use the salt shaker. So only 15% of your daily intake comes from this. So that means 85% is coming from somewhere else. And that means it's coming from all the boxes and the bags and the cans and the, highly processed foods as you get out to eat at your restaurants. So just stopping the salt shaker, it's not that it's not good. It has, its health benefits, but it's not going to make as big of a difference as you think it is. Okay. And so I want to talk a little bit more about that. So the American Heart Association, I want to get my numbers right, recommend that you limit your sodium to 1,500 milligrams per day. Okay. So no more than, or that's all we need. Okay. And about 1,500 milligrams is about 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. We are getting double, if not triple than that in our daily intake. So that's why we're having more of an issue with heart disease, is we keep getting more salt and more salt and more salt. Okay. So we're going to talk about how to decrease that. Now, of course, you can cook with it. I always tell people that you don't have to be this, you know, crazy cook where I know how to do all of these things in order to cook with herbs and spices. There is nothing wrong with you going and getting a steam bag of veggies or a frozen bag of veggies or a can of veggies, cooking those like the instructions say, and then adding your own seasoning to it. Okay. We just need to use less, like ham hocks and bacon or other stuff to season some of our vegetables with that. Or I know plenty of people, oh, I got the steam bag veggies, and how much butter did you add to it there in order to make it palatable to where you want to eat it? So you definitely don't have to do that. Spices and herbs are your preference. So even with some of the recipes that I shared in the email that you got yesterday, they're just kind of just a tool guide. You're like, oh, that's way too much of that. I love garlic, so I'll just go and put more garlic on there. Some people may not like that. I'm not as much of a curry fan. I can't do the heat and the spices, but several people in my household do. So we have like a normal savory seasoning, and then we have like a hot seasoning. So this is mine and one of the girls, and then this is all the boys. They like the hot stuff. That's perfectly fine there. So when you are cooking, a couple of rules of thumbs there are certain herbs that are more delicate than others, or if you're cooking with fresh herbs, we recommend that you add those delicate or fresh ones at the end. Okay. It might be something you're just sprinkling on the food, or you're just going to add it the last maybe like 2 minutes of cooking there. And it gives you a couple of examples there. I use a lot of basil and oregano when I'm making my like spaghetti sauce, when I'm making my Italian there. So my oregano is a little bit more of a hardy herb. So I can add those, you know, towards the beginning of my spaghetti sauce. When I got like 20 minutes left to go, I can add some of those things. And then the basil, I'm going to add a little bit towards the end. Otherwise, I'm just going to cook that herb out. I'm not going to taste it in there. Some of those herbs as well, you might lose some of the flavoring if you're buying them dried versus fresh. So that it could be that you're going to get some more of those delicate ones. You're going to buy those fresh, or those are the ones that you're going to grow on your window seal there. And then some of the other ones, the oregano and the rosemary, and even your thyme, you can add those earlier on in the cooking, and maybe those are perfectly fine to buy dry there because you're still going to get that flavoring. Sorry, skipped. Now, when you are making a recipe and it says it's for 2 people or 4 people or whatever, and then you're going to cook this for a little bit more, you're not going to just double the spices and the herbs. Okay, just because maybe you're doubling the recipe, double the spices and herbs. It's not a quite an equal thing there. It could be, wow, that's way too much salt, or that's way too much heat or spice or whatever. It's going to be just to taste. It's one of those things that you're going to have to, just like if you're making chili or you're making soup or some kind of thing or spaghetti sauce, you're going to put those herbs and spices in there, and then you're just going to get a separate spoon and taste it, throw that spoon away, and just taste it a couple of times. My church was making Brunswick stew this weekend, for those of you that are in the South and know what Brunswick stew is, and they just kept like tasting and just till they got the flavoring just right until they want it. And it needs more, salt, or it needs more pepper, it needs more ketchup, or whatever was in it. They just needed more until they got that flavor. That's what cooking with herbs and spices is. Is just to your taste. There are certain recipes I will leave out ingredients because, it's not calling for much. Is it really going to make that big of a difference? It just depends on what your flavoring or your palate is like. There's also certain ingredients that I've never heard of that spice or that herb. Do I need to go buy that for this one recipe I may never even make again? Again, buy the small little jars, or there are so many different things online nowadays. Watch where your resources, but even with extension, if you don't have this recipe or this spice, use this. One of the handouts I did give had a variety of different seasoning recipes, and it even had, here's a pumpkin pie spice seasoning. So you don't have to go buy a pumpkin pie seasoning jar. You can just make it with all of these other ingredients that you probably have in your kitchen and you're more likely to use for other recipes. Okay. When you are doing things, I don't know if I have to tell you this, but when you're any kind of seasoning, whether it's something hot or something spicy or whatever else, I have to tell my husband this, is don't sprinkle it directly over the pot. I can't tell you how many times the top has come off and the whole jar of like Old Bay seasoning is now in the shrimp or the crab legs or just whatever else is swimming in it. So be very careful about that. If nothing else, I'm like, put your finger right there, hold the top with the little holes, hold that so it doesn't fall off there. Okay. But we recommend either putting in your hand, getting a measuring spoon or something like that, pouring it in there, and then dumping that in there so that you can make sure you're putting the right amount, because you don't want to have this recipe, it's just perfect, and the last second you're trying to add a little bit more salt or pepper or oregano or basil or whatever, and next thing you know, it is swimming in there. It's nothing more upsetting than doing that. So also, just for food safety too, is don't pour it directly into the pot. Now, just to kind of give you an idea, because there are so many herbs and there's so many spices, and this is probably one of the other questions I get is what goes with what? Again, some of the handouts I gave has, okay, here is good herbs and spices for beef, for pork, for chicken, for veggies, for, whatever else. Use all those handouts. If you need more information, please don't hesitate to reach out. But I wanted to give a couple of different pictures here just to kind of give you some ideas of different things that you can use. Some of them, again, are going to be very interchangeable, or it's like, oh, it's very versatile. I can use it in a lot of different things. So rosemary, I use it a lot either in like chicken or fish. Those are kind of the main two things. My husband will put it on potatoes as well when we're roasting potatoes. Those are kind of the three main things that we'll do. Basil, that's my pasta. I'm either making a basil pesto sauce, or, again, if you don't want to make it, you can buy basil pesto as well. But that's a lot of what I'm using it in, is my sauces there. Even if I'm making a spaghetti sauce, I'll use some oregano and basil and a bay leaf in there. Dill is really good with fish. My husband will do like a lemon dill fish recipe. A lot of people down here in the South, the only way they know how to cook fish is to fry it. I'm not a big fan of fried fish, so we kind of have a different way. We're going to cook it either with that Old Bay or with some dill and some lemon there. But just because it pairs good with the meat, you can see all of them are pretty much good with veggies. It might be better with one veggie versus another veggie. Again, those herbs that are more hearty, less delicate, those would be good for things like the potatoes that you're going to have to cook for a while there. Okay. Parsley. Some of the herbs and spices are not to be put into it when you're cooking. You can just, it's maybe a garnish, or it's something, it's so delicate that you just want to add it at the end there. So potato salad or egg sandwiches are really good with parsley, and it just adds a lot of greenery to it. Just something a little bit, it makes it look special there too. Cilantro, my husband loves making his own salsa. So he's a big fan of cilantro. So he'll make it when he's doing any of his stuff, or his pico de gallo, or any of those kinds of recipes. He's a little heavy-handed on the cilantro, more so than I would like. Oregano, again, just like the basil there, it goes really well with a lot of pasta dishes or marinades. Just Italian is more what I think about it, but I do use oregano on some vegetables too. I will even make toast in the morning, and I'll drizzle, even though I love butter, I'll drizzle some olive oil on my toast, just make the toast like normal, drizzle a little olive oil, and then I'll sprinkle a little oregano, maybe some basil, and I'll use garlic powder, because again, I'm trying to use less salt, just to make my own Italian garlic bread. And so that's something different. It's not just for lunchtime or dinner times. You can use it for some of your snacks or some of your little breakfast foods as well. Okay. One of the recipes I sent you guys was like an herbal, or garden herbal tea. Those are really good as well. We recently had a tea workshop, and it was like, oh, here's your lavender and mint tea, and here is your honey and citrus tea. So that's the only time I drink hot tea, is if I'm sick and I'm trying to get some of the medicinal herbs to help me feel better there. But we will also do mint, either maybe in a fruit salad or on it, and even some of the fruit infused waters. So if you're trying to be a little bit healthier and drink water, but it's kind of boring to you, then you can use even different herbs as well. Strawberry mint is really good. So I'll just get a pitcher or a glass of water, put some little strawberry slices in there and some little mint leaves in there, and let the flavors of that fruit and the herbs blend into that water. So maybe I'll make it last night for me to have today. And then it's a nice different flavoring to my water. And so it's a strawberry mint water too. Thyme, Again, I use it a lot on different roasted vegetables. And then, of course, we use a lot of time during the Thanksgiving season on our poultry dishes and even stuffing or other stuff like that too. Sage is very versatile no matter what kind of meat you're cooking, beef, chicken, pork. It's good for those hearty vegetables like potatoes and carrots as well. So it's one of those you can put in there early and let it cook for a while, and it'll leave some really nice kind of that smoky sage flavor. The University of Georgia has a lot of good resources. I got resources from a lot of different universities, but one of my friends from University of Georgia kind of sent this to me, and you could just Google it. It's on there, but they have kind of like a little infographic, like the thing on the left there, about all of these different spices. So I've got them all kind of listed there. And if you want something particular, like, oh, I've always wanted to know about this, or I've heard about this, or I've got this in my cabinet and I don't know what to do with it. It gives you some background information just about that, and kind of gives you an idea of what it tastes like, what it goes well with, when, how you could use it or even make your own substitute for that. So allspice is the example that I have up here, that if you have a recipe that calls for allspice but you don't have it, then if you have some cinnamon, some cloves, and some nutmeg, you could make your own allspice. You could get some, spice jars and make your own here and just label it. So I put two examples up there of the allspice and the cinnamon because that's two of the ones that we use a lot during this time of year, but they have little fact sheets or infographics on all of those. So if you'd like more information about those, you can probably just, Google it, but I can also send you the direct link to that. Okay, so that's the main part of the workshop there. I do have, again, I want to go through some of the handouts as well as I want to show you what I've got here at my table there. But before I do that, I want to remind you, before I minimize this PowerPoint here, is our next Get the Dish workshop is scheduled for next Tuesday, November 19th. Again, at all the different times, and it's on healthy habits start with breakfast, because they always say that the most important meal of the day is your breakfast. So if you haven't registered for that, I know that the link's up there, but we will also share that, and that will be in the email that you get this afternoon or in the next couple of days when they send that email there. Okay. So I have a little video I want to share. And again, I was trying to figure out what kind of a demonstration to do, because when I'm doing it with herbs and spices, basically I'm gonna cook food like I normally do, and then I'm gonna just add some herbs and spices. There's not a whole lot to see, or it's something that I'm gonna be cooking it for a while that you're not really gonna get to see. I'm not like Rachel Ray where I can be like, here's the final end product right there. So I've got a little video that I'm gonna share with you guys first. This is from South Dakota State University Extension. Is just a brief thing. And this is new potatoes with garlic and herbs. Okay, so you can see there that, again, she's just making potatoes on top of the stove just like she would normally. I love the whole like that thing that she did with her hands, like it's immediately cut up and beautiful there. I wish I could just do that in my kitchen and everything would be cut up that easily. But that's a simple little recipe there. And whenever you're looking for recipes, I really recommend that you kind of like when I'm looking for something for one of our workshops, I want another extension resource because I know that it hopefully should be healthy and good for and as well as tasty. So I will just Google extension, whatever recipes, extension, salt-free recipes or extension, roasted vegetables recipes. And they've got a lot of different videos out there. So I know I'm getting a good resource. You can see that the ingredients were just the potatoes, the olive oil, that was the garlic powder. The green was the parsley there. You could use, parsley, dill, or thyme. Just depends on what your flavor palette is, or maybe just whichever one you have in the pantry there. They probably, I could have even said that she could have left the salt out maybe, but they didn't put that much there, as well as the pepper. Other resources, if you are interested in cooking with herbs and spices, the American Heart Association has a lot of good different recipes there. You can come and look up a particular recipe based upon the type of meat that you're going to have, or course, all the different courses there. And, so if I'm not finding an extension recipe, I'm finding a recipe from a .org, like an organizational such as diabetes.org or heart.org. There are other handouts and fact sheets as well from the American Heart Association. But most people who come to my workshops on herbs and spices are concerned about, blood pressure or the amount of salt in their diet. It's not just vegetables, even, if I can move this out of the way. Okay. We have a Mediterranean style of cooking that we also teach. Even just your snacks. One of the things that we recommend is snacking on nuts and seeds. But a lot of times our snacks are in the boxes and the bags and the cans, and they're high amounts of sodium. So watching the nutrition labels on how much sodium is in that, because as we mentioned, about 1,500 milligrams is your the recommended amount there for you not to get any more. But we on average are getting about like 3,400 milligrams. So we want to keep that amount down. So this is a perfect snack that's very simple to make. You can just, again, get some almonds there, or maybe if you're making different pies or cakes or cookie, whatever, and you've got pecans, you got walnuts, you got almonds, any of that stuff that's left over, and you're like, what am I going to do with the rest of this bag? Just putting it with some olive oil, whatever kinds of, again, seasoning you like there. This particular recipe uses fresh rosemary or crushed chili flakes. Again, depends on your heat level there. And it's very simple. Again, there's 3 steps. You just heat the almonds there, put the seasoning on there, cook it for a little bit longer there, just to get some of that flavor to blend into those almonds. We'll even make crackers. Like we just go get we get unsalted crackers there, and we'll make our own little seasoning mix. Again, whatever you like. My family, likes a little bit of heat, so they'll have some of those chili flakes in there. But we'll add, garlic powder and onion powder and different things just to get different flavors there. And it's a healthier snack because I'm not putting salt. You can also, if you want your popcorn to be a little bit healthier, then you could do that as well. The popcorn.org website is, again, a website about popcorn. It's the Popcorn kind of Growers Association there. And they've got a lot of recipes for, here's a salt-free seasoning for popcorn. Here's, this is, some, like your white cheddar popcorn, you can make that yourself. So we have a whole a list of different resources for recipes, no matter what you're cooking there. So I also just want to share really quickly, if you didn't read that email that we sent yesterday, just some of your handouts is when I want to go. If there's this whole, I didn't make this one. I'm not going to take credit for it. I think it was Stanley County Extension Office. I apologize if I get that wrong, but they broke this recipe book down that they put together by the different herbs and spices. So if you're like, oh, I have basil, what else can I use basil? I just bought this whole jar of basil and I don't know what to cook with it. So you can see these are kind of the main, I think, 10 there that we're cooking with. Again, it gives you that information about cooking with dried and fresh, gives you some basic herbs and marinades. If you want to grow your own herbs and then you're trying to dry them yourselves, again, we have Penn State Extension has some really good recipes there. Texas A&M AgriLife Extension, you can see this handout there too, that if you're, oh, okay, I've got a lot of beef, or I got a lot of pork or poultry or whatever else, it was on sale. These are the different flavorings that you could use that go well with those different things. Even some of your more traditional ones. We had a heart healthy program that we used to teach here in North Carolina Extension, and it was just showing how we could tweak a recipe. You've got your green beans there. You can get, this recipe calls for just canned green beans. That's what I'm always telling people. You don't have to have fresh veggies to do this. You can have them, but you can also get canned. When you go buy canned products, they've got 3 kind of varieties. They've got the regular, the reduced sodium, and the no salt added. The reduced sodium is about half of the amount of salt as the regular. And then of course, there's no salt added in the other one. So it's a difference of 380 milligrams of salt in the regular, and that's per serving, versus 190 milligrams in the no salt or the reduced sodium, and then 0. So there's a big difference there from 0 even to 190. Maybe you can't get all the way down to the no salt added. It's like, I got to have some salt in there. This is a way that you can do that. Have the no salt added, use your own other flavorings, whether it's putting some onion or some celery, put some parsley, rosemary, basil, that kind of stuff. So there's 2 different recipes here. Also, if you're interested in making your own spaghetti sauce, but you want it to be low sodium, this is a perfect example there too. So those recipes are in there. As I mentioned, I love snack mix, whether it's, like the crackers or everyone's making Chex Mix. Again, putting some different flavorings and seasoning, as opposed to everyone I see nowadays is dipping something in white or dark chocolate during the holidays there. Again, I didn't want you to say that I didn't give you recipes, but this is one of the things I was talking about. If you want to make your own seasoned salt, get a jar, low sodium there. If you're like, I like a lot of Latino flavoring, or I love Thai food or curry or any of that, there's all these kinds of things. The great things about those too is they're small, that you can just, cut these out there. And you can, even if you want to give away blends, maybe you're making some own little blends for people for the holidays. Everyone in your family has high blood pressure and you need to reduce the salt. Go buy a packet of these and put the little labels on there so they know what's the seasoning packet is. Okay. So that's some of that information there. Lastly, the kind of the demo or the stuff I wanted to show you is some of the other resources I have. Is I went and I bought these jars right here. You can get them on from Amazon or Walmart or wherever else. You can see that they have 2 different types to the lids. So it's got the little holes there, or it has where I can open it and get the spoon. These are glass. You can buy them at the dollar store if you want to. For plastic, you don't need, if you don't want them in bulk, you don't have to buy them in bulk. But there's 20 to this little, I know you can't quite see it. There's 20 slots here in this little box. But not only with this, it came with these little pre-made labels. Okay. So all of these labels, oh, garlic powder and garlic salt and ginger. So I don't have to make my own labels. I can get blank ones, and it comes with a little pen that I can write on there. So I wrote taco seasoning on this one, but if not, I can just stick that label. If you're like me, and I also sometimes have a hard time seeing, then they have large print labels as well So it depends on how your pantry is there. If you've got things labeled different ways, but this one just says pepper, so I can see that pretty well. One of the other things I recommend that if you're going to start making your own seasoning blends is do it ahead of time. When I'm making my chicken seasoning blend, I don't like every single time I want to cook chicken, gotta make the seasoning blend again. So I will make a good helping of it, like in a bowl, and then put it in a jar. I recommend these little funnels. They're collapsible, so it doesn't, because I've got some big funnels that take up so much space in my drawer. So you can see it lays flat. You can buy these 1, 2, 3 in a pack. They're all different kinds of colors if you're one of those people that loves colors. But it sits really nicely here in my funnel or in my jar right there. So all I'm going to do is just simply start pouring these. Again, remember, use your measuring spoons to do that. I don't want to pour here because then the same thing could happen over the pot. It can just dump out there. But these are some simple things that I recommend that you buy. I also have these little things in these little plastic things. I think I got these from like the dollar store. They've got different types of wet places to hold your seasoning, but I'm going to use these 6 together all the time because this is my chicken seasoning. So it's got a little like handle right here. So I just shove that in my pantry, and when I'm ready, I'll just pull it out. I can make my chicken seasoning. So just kind of keeping some of your similar things together might help you. If everyone in your family does that, like, I'll go in my pantry. What did you do with all of my spices? And it's every which way. So I try to kind of keep them together if I'm going to use them for similar things there. But I'll make a couple of different things. I've got my taco seasoning, my chicken seasoning recipe, and my chicken seasoning is going to have all of these. It's got thyme, paprika, oregano, onion powder, garlic powder, pepper, and maybe some kosher salt if I want to add to that. And I will use that whether I have like a whole chicken, like I want to do a rotisserie chicken, or even if I'm just doing chicken legs or chicken thighs, I can use that same marinade for no matter what. And it's all ready to go. It's all in my jar. So all I have to do is open my cabinet and pull that out. And then when it gets low, I make another batch of it there. So I don't know if anybody had any particular questions. That's kind of the presentation that I have there. So
Fantastic, Jennifer. I don't know about everyone joining, but my mouth is watering. Even I that I do a lot of, my own mixes, there's some inspiration and I'm like, oh, I need to go check out these recipes. But with that, we do have a question that came in regards to that sodium that you discussed, because it is really something we need to be mindful of. But if you rinse the veggies off from the can, does that get rid of the salt?
I think that when I've looked at it, I think some people will say maybe like 30% of the salt gets. I've seen different amounts. So some of the salt will, but you're still not going to get that same amount. But I'm one of those individuals. I'm busy. I don't know about you guys, but I'm sure all of us are busy. I want to have as least or as few possible steps as I can when I'm in that kitchen cooking. So if I'm going to have to get my colander out and put my veggies in here or my can just to rinse it, that's something else I have to clean, a colander. I don't want to have to do that. So why not just buy the can, even if it's 50%? Why not just buy it with the reduced sodium so it's only got half the amount so that it saves you that step of having to rinse them. That's what my recommendation is. If you can't get to the no salt added, then just buy the 50%, because when you go to the store, no matter what brand, or I get store brand stuff, all 3 of those cans, the regular, the reduced sodium, or the no salt added, they cost all the same. So it's not like it's cheaper if you buy it and it's already got the salt in there. So that might be a reason you're buying it with the salt. So hopefully that makes sense, but that's my recommendation. Is I'm always asking people, why not just buy it without it? So that's one less step you have to do.
Yeah, that's a great recommendation. And maybe they already bought it with salt. So
Mhm.
according to your information, if they're going to start enacting some of your mindfulness and some steps, then they could rinse that off and reduce it
Yeah.
30%. So
Yeah.
better than nothing.
Yeah, and if you're going, I mean, if you're getting stuff from a food pantry or again, whatever you've already got in your cabinet there, then definitely every little bit will help. It's just a lot of times, as I said, it's not the salt shaker that's causing the problem. It's what's already in the can, what's already in the box. So if you are doing that too, we want you to watch out for portion sizes because even a can of green beans, even though they're vegetables, they're good for you even if it's only got 50% reduced sodium, half of it in there. A can of veggies or green beans is about, I think it's 3.5 servings when I last checked. If it's just you and one other person in your household eating, you might be eating double the amount. So eating double the amount of green beans is okay, but that means that you're almost getting double the amount of salt in a can of green beans, something that should be healthy for you. So just being aware of what you're doing is perfectly fine, but every little bit you can is good.
Agreed. With that, Jennifer, I'm going to launch our last poll
Okay.
for the presentation. And so if everyone wouldn't mind participating in that. And then we also had a comment come into the chat about finding the best way for them to organize their spices and seasonings is to alphabetize them. So
Yes,
that,
that goes back to if everyone in your house will do that or keep it that way, or if you're the only one cooking. But yeah, when I buy these little like these jars, they come with all the labels and they're all alphabetized, here. And I know if you buy a container and it's got the like all the spices already in there, they're typically alphabetized too. So um, my husband uses a lot of herbs and spices because I mean he does a good amount of cooking too. So I'm not going to complain if he didn't put the spice back where I would put the spice back because he's cooking. So I can't complain too much about that. So well,
I'm going to give a few more seconds on that poll, but I'm placing into the chat. We do have a post-class survey link. Before Jennifer started showing us some of those different utensils, some things that can really help us in the kitchen, she did discuss next week's lesson. It is our last lesson of this fall series. So I'm going to place that in the chat as well. But just want to remind you that we welcome you to participate in our last session coming up next Tuesday. But if you wouldn't mind participating in the class survey link, we have some awesome raffle prizes that we share um, with the with the different lessons. Sorry.
oh yeah,
And then I am going to end that poll as well. Thank you for participating in that poll. And then we did have to postpone last week's presentation due to a personal matter with our speaker. And we are still giving some time as our speaker dealt with that issue. And then we're going to communicate with all of you what we will do, whether we're going to add a live session or if we're going to share out a recording of her presentation. So we'll definitely update you all on that as soon as we know more.
yes, please fill out that survey. We really do appreciate the information that you share with us, and we use that information also to think about like, the class maybe when we do this series, maybe next year. What went well, what didn't, what we want to change, that kind of stuff. So as well as she mentioned, it will enter you into the drawing for the prizes. And so I've got some spice jars and some other little funnels and stuff.